The last line of defense. In the crystalline chambers of the Galactic Council's emergency bunker, Supreme Counselor Zixtal's translucent appendages trembled as another holographic display winked out. The Ravager fleet had just obliterated New Eden, the most technologically advanced civilization in the Orion Arm. Their quantum phase barriers and dark matter weapons had proven as useful as paper against a plasma torch. 17 systems in 3 standard cycles, announced First Speaker Venra, their bioluminescent skin pulsing with distress patterns. The Ravagers adapt to every weapon, every defense. They're evolving. The gathered representatives of over 300 species shifted uneasily in their environmental pods. Each civilization had brought their ultimate weapons to bear against the Ravager threat. Each had failed spectacularly. In the shadows of the chamber's far corner, Commander Sarah Chen of Earth's Expeditionary Force watched silently. Humanity had only joined the Council 5 years ago, barely earning their seat after proving they could achieve faster-than-light travel without destroying themselves. Most species still viewed them as primitive savages, barely better than animals. The fact that humans could survive on their high-gravity, oxygen-rich, predator-filled death world of Earth was seen as proof of their barbaric nature. The Ravagers have adapted to nullify every energy weapon in our arsenal, Supreme Counselor Zixtal continued. Their biological ships can now phase through our strongest shields. They've even developed countermeasures to quantum entanglement bombs. We are out of options. Sarah stepped forward, her boots echoing on the crystal floor. Several delegates recoiled at her approach. Humans were the only species that still used physical locomotion rather than gravitic assistance. Not every option, she said, her voice carrying across the chamber. You haven't tried our way yet. The chamber erupted in dismissive chirps and electromagnetic pulses of derision. Your projectile weapons, scoffed Representative Kethel of the Silicon Consciousness. Your combustion-based explosives. These are children's toys compared to our technology. Sarah smiled, a gesture that made several delegates flinch. Humans were also the only species that showed teeth as a sign of friendship. That's exactly the point, she said. You've all evolved past physical weapons. Your bodies are adapted to peaceful environments. Your weapons all based on energy manipulation. But the Ravagers, they're biological, like us. She gestured to the holographic display showing the latest battle. Look how they fight. They adapt through accelerated evolution. They can counter any energy weapon, any field manipulation, but they still have mass. They still have to obey physics. Supreme Counselor Zixtal's appendages stilled. Explain. Humans are Deathworlders, Sarah continued. We evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day. We survived through physical adaptation and mechanical innovation. Our weapons don't rely on energy fields or quantum states. They rely on kinetic energy, chemistry, and physical laws that can't be evolved around. She pulled up her own holographic display, showing footage from Earth's military training grounds. The delegates watched in horror as human soldiers navigated obstacle courses under live fire, fought hand-to-hand in toxic environments, and operated in gravity conditions that would crush most species. The Ravagers adapt through biological evolution, Sarah explained. But you can't evolve around a bullet's kinetic energy. You can't adapt to survive a thermobaric explosion. Physics is physics. Primitive, muttered Representative Kethel, but there was a new note in their voice. Uncertainty. Primitive, yes, Sarah agreed, but effective. And more importantly, we're already adapted to fight in conditions that would kill most species. We can operate in high gravity, toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures. We can take wounds that would be fatal to your species and keep fighting. First Speaker Venra's bioluminescence shifted to a pattern indicating deep thought. You're suggesting we deploy human forces against the Ravagers. I'm suggesting you let us fight the way we evolved to fight, Sarah corrected. No energy weapons, no force fields. Just human soldiers with human weapons, supported by your transportation and communication technology. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. The most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, with their godlike technology and mastery over fundamental forces, were considering turning to the primitive Deathworlders as their last hope. Supreme Counselor Zixtal raised all four appendages in the gesture of formal recognition. The Council will need to discuss this proposal, but given our situation, they paused as another holographic display winked out. Another system lost. We may not have the luxury of prejudice any longer. Sarah nodded and stepped back into the shadows. The council members began their deliberations, their voices mixing in a cacophony of different communication methods. They didn't know it yet, but they were about to learn why humans named their warships after predators, and why Earth's classification as a death world wasn't a mark of shame. It was a promise. What doesn't kill us? The assembled alien delegation shifted uncomfortably in their environmental suits as they watched the human training exercise unfold before them. Through the reinforced observation windows of Earth's primary military training facility, they witnessed what they could only describe as voluntary torture. Colonel James Rodriguez stood beside them, bareheaded and relaxed in Earth's lethal atmosphere. "This is just basic training," he explained as another squad of human soldiers emerged from a pool of murky water, carrying heavy packs and dummy weapons. Nothing special. First speaker Vendra's bioluminescence flickered with distress. They're submersing themselves into hydrogen monoxide, voluntarily, while carrying weight. "We call it swimming," Rodriguez said with a smile. "Good for building endurance. The packs simulate combat conditions." The aliens watched as the soldiers immediately began a running course, their boots throwing up mud as they navigated obstacles under simulated weapons fire. No energy shields protected them from the elements. No gravitic assistance helped them over the walls and through the tunnels. Just raw human strength and determination. "Impossible," muttered technical advisor Cathal, their crystalline form vibrating with agitation. Their muscles should have failed by now. The energy expenditure alone. "Humans are persistence predators," Rodriguez interrupted. "We evolved to pursue prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. A healthy human can run for hours, even days if necessary. And that's before you factor in our adaptive endurance training." The next phase of training involved close combat drills. The aliens watched in horror as humans deliberately struck each other, practicing lethal techniques with controlled precision. When one soldier took a hard hit and fell, they simply got up and continued, ignoring what should have been a debilitating injury. "Your species enjoys this?" asked Supreme Counselor Zixtal. "Some more than others," Rodriguez admitted. "But we all understand its necessity. Especially now." A loud explosion drew their attention to the firing range, where another group of soldiers was practicing with what the aliens considered absurdly primitive weapons. Projectile launchers, guns as humans called them, propelled small pieces of metal at supersonic velocities. The targets, designed to simulate Ravager biology, were torn apart by the kinetic force. "Your weapons," technical advisor Kithel began, then paused as a soldier demonstrated a rocket launcher, the backblast alone making the observation window vibrate. "They're so simple," Rodriguez finished. "That's their beauty. The Ravagers adapt through biological evolution. They can develop countermeasures to energy weapons, shield frequencies, even quantum states. But they can't evolve fast enough to ignore physics. A supersonic piece of depleted uranium doesn't care about biological adaptation." The delegation followed Rodriguez to the next training area, where soldiers practiced in environments designed to simulate alien atmospheres. Without protective suits, humans moved through chambers filled with various toxic gases and extreme temperatures. "Our bodies are remarkably adaptable," Rodriguez explained as they watched a squad operate in a high-methane environment. "We can temporarily survive in conditions that would kill most species instantly, and what doesn't kill us literally makes us stronger." "You mean your species actively develops resistance to hostile conditions?" First speaker Vendra's translator struggled to convey their incredulity. "Within limits," Rodriguez said. "But yes, Expose us to survivable amounts of radiation. We adapt. Toxic environments? Our bodies develop tolerances. Even injuries that don't kill us outright often leave us tougher than before. The final demonstration was perhaps the most shocking. In a massive chamber designed to simulate variable gravity conditions, human soldiers were training at 3 times standard Earth gravity. While the alien delegation required extensive support from their environmental suits just to survive Earth's normal gravity, the humans below were fighting, running, and carrying equipment in conditions that should have crushed them. This is why we believe we can fight the Ravagers effectively, Rodriguez concluded. Not despite being Deathworlders, but because of it. We're already adapted to conditions most species consider impossible. We've spent our entire evolutionary history fighting against a planet that wanted us dead. The Ravagers. He smiled that disconcerting human smile again. They're just the latest challenge. As if to punctuate his point, an alarm blared through the facility. Rodriguez checked his communications device, a surprisingly simple mechanical interface rather than the neural links preferred by most species. Speaking of challenges, he said, we just received word that the Ravagers have entered the Sol system. Would you like to see how our training translates to actual combat? The alien delegation exchanged glances through their environmental suits. They had come to Earth expecting to find primitive savages playing at war. Instead, they had discovered something far more terrifying and far more promising. A species that had turned their harsh evolution into a weapon, their primitive nature into an advantage. Show us, Supreme Counselor Zixtal said finally. Show us how Deathworlders fight. Rodriguez's smile grew wider. With pleasure. Though you might want to reinforce your environmental suits, the observation deck on our warships can get a little energetic. As they followed the human colonel to the transport area, First Speaker Venra transmitted a private message to the Supreme Counselor. Perhaps we were wrong to pity them for evolving on such a harsh world. Perhaps we should have feared them instead. The Supreme Counselor's response was immediate. No, we were wrong to do either. We should have respected them. And now, finally, we will learn why. The hunter becomes the hunted. The bridge of the ESS Wolverine hummed with activity as Captain Maya Chen watched the tactical display. Unlike the crystalline elegance of alien ships, the human vessel's command center was utilitarian, filled with physical controls and backup systems. No neural interfaces, no quantum consciousness links, just buttons, switches, and hardened screens. Ravager bioships entering weapons range, announced Lieutenant Park from the weapons station. 5 capital-class vessels, dozens of smaller ones. Energy signatures suggest they're already adapting their outer shells for energy weapon defense. Let them adapt, Maya said, allowing herself a small smile. Weapons free. Show them how we fight on Earth. The Wolverine's main batteries roared to life. Not energy beams or plasma torpedoes, but massive railguns accelerating tungsten rods to relativistic speeds. The alien delegation watching from the reinforced observation deck flinched at the sound of actual physical weapons being fired in space. The effect on the Ravager ships was devastating. Their biological hulls, evolved to reflect energy weapons and phase through force fields, provided no defense against kinetic penetrators moving at a significant fraction of light speed. The first salvo tore through 3 smaller ships, the sheer transfer of momentum ripping them apart. Impossible, breathed Technical Advisor Keffel. Such primitive weapons. Physics is physics, Maya replied, not taking her eyes off the tactical display. They can't evolve around Newton's laws. All that mass has to go somewhere. She keyed the ship-wide comm. Launch fighters. The aliens watched in amazement as human space fighters deployed. Not the elegant energy field-enclosed crafts used by most species, but rugged vessels that looked more like ancient atmospheric aircraft. They carried physical ammunition and chemical rockets, technology that most species had abandoned millennia ago. Enemy showing signs of adaptation, Park reported. Bioships attempting to generate denser outer shells. Switch to armor-piercing rounds, Maya ordered. and launched the Wasps. A new wave of even smaller craft emerged from the Wolverine's launch bays. Barely larger than torpedoes, the Wasps were another uniquely human innovation. Semi-autonomous drone swarms carrying a variety of primitive weapons. The Ravager ships, their defenses optimized for energy weapons and growing denser to resist kinetic impacts, never saw the real threat coming. The Wasps carried something even more basic than bullets: chemicals. Deploying corrosives, announced the drone control officer. And starting Phase 2. The alien observers watched in horrified fascination as the tiny human drones attached themselves to the Ravager bioships and began pumping a cocktail of terrestrial chemicals into their hulls. The same evolutionary adaptability that made the Ravagers so dangerous now worked against them. Their living ships tried to adapt to each chemical attack, only to be hit with a different compound. Are those Earth substances? First speaker Venra asked, noting how quickly the corrosives were working. Just common cleaning products, mostly, Maya explained, mixed with some pesticides and industrial solvents. Amazing what you can do with simple chemistry. The larger Ravager ships, their outer hulls compromised by the chemical attack, were now vulnerable to conventional weapons again. The Wolverine's railguns spoke once more, this time with devastating effect. Enemy fleet attempting to regroup, Park reported. They're retreating. The tactical display showed the remaining Ravager ships breaking formation, trying to escape the unexpected onslaught. But Maya wasn't done teaching them about human warfare. Deploy the honeybees, she ordered. Another wave of drones launched, these carrying nothing more complex than high explosives and simple guidance systems. The Ravagers, used to dealing with smart weapons that could be fooled or jammed, had no defense against weapons that simply followed basic pursuit algorithms and exploded on contact. Remarkable, Supreme Counselor Zixtal commented as they watched the last Ravager ship dissolve under the combined chemical and kinetic assault. Your species fights like we evolved to fight, Maya finished. No fancy technology, no advanced energy weapons, just applied physics, chemistry, and determination. The battle was over in less than 30 minutes. The Ravager fleet, which had devastated the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, had been completely destroyed by weapons that most species considered obsolete. But surely they will adapt to these tactics as well, Technical Advisor Kefl asked. They'll try, Maya agreed. They'll develop harder shells against our kinetic weapons, try to neutralize our chemicals, learn to spot our drones. But that's the beauty of human warfare. We have thousands of years of experience fighting enemies that adapt. When one weapon stops working, we try another. We've spent our entire history finding new ways to kill things that are trying to kill us. She turned to face the alien delegation fully. The Ravagers made a fundamental mistake. They assumed that technological advancement only moves in one direction, toward energy weapons and quantum mechanics. They forgot that sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective. And they definitely forgot what happens when you back a Deathworlder into a corner. The tactical display showed more human ships arriving in the system. Vessels with names like Cobra, Piranha, and Honey Badger. Names that meant nothing to the alien observers, but would have sent chills down the spine of any Earth biologist. This was just the first engagement, Maya said, her smile now decidedly predatory. Wait until they see what else we've learned from our lovely planet's wildlife. Evolution's children. The Galactic Council's War Observatory was unusually quiet as Admiral Sarah Chen delivered her report. The massive holographic display showed a very different galaxy than it had 3 months ago. Where red markers had once indicated Ravager-controlled systems, green zones of human-secured space were steadily expanding. The Ravager offensive has not just been halted, Sarah announced, her voice carrying across the chamber. It's been reversed. In the past 90 days, human forces have reclaimed 27 systems and established defensive positions in 43 others. The assembled council members watched as footage from various battles played out above them. Human ships, appearing crude and primitive to their eyes, systematically dismantling Ravager fleets with weapons that hadn't been used in warfare for millennia. Ground forces in simple mechanical armor suits charging into combat zones that would kill most species instantly. But the casualties, first speaker Venra's bioluminescence pulsed with concern. Surely such primitive combat methods are remarkably effective, Sarah interrupted, pulling up the statistical analysis. Human casualty rates are under 12% compared to the near-total losses suffered by conventional forces. As it turns out, being hard to kill has its advantages. The display shifted to medical footage that made several council members recoil. Human soldiers, having survived wounds that should have been fatal, were not just recovering but returning to combat within days or weeks. Your bodies, technical advisor Kethel's crystalline form vibrated with fascination. They repair themselves, without regeneration chambers. Enhanced by medical technology, yes, but the basic healing capability is natural, Sarah explained. We evolved redundant systems, rapid tissue regeneration, and the ability to function despite significant injury. A human can lose half their blood volume and still fight. We can survive the loss of limbs, operate with collapsed lungs, and continue combat operations with broken bones. The council chamber filled with murmurs of disbelief and, increasingly, respect. The footage showed human soldiers adapting to new Ravager tactics in real time, switching weapons and strategies faster than the enemy could evolve countermeasures. But perhaps most importantly, Sarah continued, we've learned how the Ravagers think. Their biological evolution is remarkably similar to Earth's evolutionary arms race. We've spent millions of years competing with organisms that adapt and evolve. We know how to stay ahead of the curve. She gestured to a new series of displays showing human research laboratories. Our scientists have been studying Ravager biology. Their adaptation rate is impressive, but it follows predictable patterns. They evolve like Earth's bacteria, quick but constrained by basic laws of physics and chemistry. We've developed new weapons specifically designed to exploit these constraints. The next footage showed the latest human innovation: biological weapons based on Earth's extremophile organisms, bacteria that had evolved in volcanic vents and Arctic ice, modified to target Ravager bioships, viruses that had spent millions of years adapting to overcome rapidly evolving immune systems, now repurposed for space warfare. You're fighting evolution with evolution, Supreme Counselor Sixtol realized. Exactly, Sarah smiled. The Ravagers aren't the only ones who can adapt. The difference is, we've had billions of years of planetary evolution to draw upon. Earth's biosphere is the result of an endless arms race between predator and prey, parasite and host. We're not just using our own adaptations, we're using everything our world taught us. The display shifted again, showing human forces teaching other species their combat techniques. Alien soldiers learning to use physical weapons, to rely on mechanical systems instead of vulnerable energy fields, to think in terms of chemistry and physics rather than pure technology. The Ravagers made two crucial mistakes, Sarah explained. First, they assumed that technological advancement meant abandoning primitive methods. Second, they thought being a Deathworlder was a disadvantage, that evolving on a harsh world made us less civilized. They're learning how wrong they were, one system at a time. A new alert flashed across the display. Another Ravager fleet had been detected, this one larger than any previously encountered. But instead of panic, the council chamber remained calm. They had seen enough to know how this would end. If you'll excuse me, Sarah said, checking her decidedly non-neural interface command tablet. It appears I have another battle to fight. The ESS Honey Badger is leading this operation, and I never miss a chance to show the galaxy why we named a ship after Earth's most fearless predator. As she turned to leave, Supreme Counselor Sixtol raised all four appendages in the formal gesture of respect, an honor rarely given to younger species. Admiral Chen, they called out, we once called Earth a death world as an insult. We're beginning to understand it should have been a warning. Not to us, but to any who would threaten the galaxy's peace. Sarah paused at the chamber's entrance. A warning would have been polite, she agreed. But I prefer the practical demonstration. Sometimes the only way to learn is the hard way. Her smile turned predatory. And humans are very, very good teachers. Galaxy's new guardians, the Great Hall of the Galactic Council, had changed in the 6 months since humanity joined the war. Gone were the purely aesthetic crystalline decorations and floating energy displays. Now the walls bore practical reinforcement, and physical backup systems supplemented the quantum computers. The Council had learned from their human allies that beauty shouldn't come at the cost of survival. Commander Sarah Chen stood at the center of the chamber, but this time not in the shadows. The holographic display behind her showed the final battles of the Ravager War, a series of crushing defeats that had driven the biological hive mind into full retreat. The last Ravager fleet has been eliminated from known space, she announced. Their remaining bioships have fled beyond the galactic rim. Based on their observed behavior patterns and evolutionary trends, our xenobiologists believe they won't return. They've learned what happens when you challenge Deathworlders in their own galaxy. The chamber erupted in celebration, a cacophony of different species expressing joy in their unique ways. But Supreme Counselor Zixtal raised their appendages for silence. We celebrate not just victory, they announced, but enlightenment. We had grown complacent in our technological advancement, believing that progress meant abandoning the physical for the energetic, the mechanical for the quantum. Humanity has taught us otherwise. The display shifted to show the changes spreading across galactic civilization. Ships of all species now carried physical weapons alongside energy beams. Soldiers trained in environmental suits, learning to function in hostile conditions rather than hiding from them. Research stations studied Earth's biology, seeking to understand how evolution had crafted such resilient beings. Your victory was not just military. First Speaker Venra added, their bioluminescence glowing with patterns of respect. You've revolutionized how we think about warfare, about adaptation, about survival itself. We called Earth a death world, but we never understood what that truly meant. Sarah nodded. Earth taught us that survival isn't about avoiding challenges. It's about adapting to overcome them. Every species on our planet is the product of billions of years of evolutionary arms races. We didn't just survive our harsh world. We were forged by it. Technical Advisor Kivil, their crystalline form now reinforced with human-inspired engineering, brought up new data. The integration of human military doctrine has increased fleet survival rates by 300%. Ground force effectiveness has improved by 470%. And our dependency on vulnerable energy-based systems has decreased by 60%. But perhaps most importantly, Supreme Counselor Zixtal continued, we've learned that true civilization isn't about abandoning our origins, but about understanding them. Humanity's primitive nature, as we foolishly called it, was actually their greatest strength. The display showed footage from the new Galactic Defense Academy, where human instructors taught other species everything from hand-to-hand combat to survival skills. The once disparaged Deathworlders had become the galaxy's premier military trainers. We're establishing joint research programs, Sarah explained, combining human adaptability with galactic technology. We're even seeing the first volunteer programs for enhanced environmental tolerance training. It turns out quite a few species are interested in becoming a little more Deathworlder-like. Which brings us to our next proposal, Supreme Counselor Zixtal announced. The Council has voted to establish a new galactic defense force, with humanity taking a leading role. Your species has proven not just its combat capability, but its ability to teach, to protect, to understand the very nature of survival and adaptation. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You want humans to guard the galaxy, the same humans you called primitive barbarians 6 months ago. We want humanity to help us become stronger, First Speaker Venra corrected. Not by abandoning our advanced technology, but by remembering that sometimes the old ways, the physical ways, are just as important. You've shown us that true advancement means understanding all levels of warfare, all aspects of survival. The chamber's main doors opened, revealing a delegation of human military leaders. Behind them stood representatives from every major species, all wearing variations of human-inspired combat gear. The galaxy is changing, Supreme Counselor Zixtal declared. The Ravagers taught us that we cannot rely solely on advanced technology. We need the wisdom that comes from evolution, from survival, from facing death, and adapting to overcome it. We need Deathworlders. Sarah looked out at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. She saw not the disdain and fear of 6 months ago, but respect and understanding. The galaxy had learned what Earth had known all along, that strength comes in many forms, that survival requires both wisdom and will, and that sometimes the harshest beginnings create the strongest defenders. "Well," she said with a smile that no longer made anyone flinch, "I suppose someone has to teach you how to properly name a warship. You can't strike fear into the heart of an enemy with names like peaceful contemplation or harmonious integration." The chamber filled with laughter, another human trait that had become surprisingly popular among other species. As Sarah looked out at the changed galaxy, she couldn't help but feel proud. Humanity had come to the stars expecting to be the primitive newcomers. Instead, they had become teachers, protectors, and living proof that sometimes the hardest path creates the strongest travelers. The Deathworlders had arrived, and the galaxy was better for it.